God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. But God only knows the real you. There's a kind of love that God only knows.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 60 of Your Journey Is Not Over. My name is Tanya Pearson Randolph. This is my own personal journey, and the expressions and opinions are of my own. I own all the rights to my personal journey, and to Your Journey Is Not Over. Neither are to be used, copied, or edited without my consent. I'm going to start right where I left off on Tuesday's episode. It was January 11th, 2020. Life was normal, routine, happy, calm, peaceful. Along with my husband, we had created a nice, calm, safe, secure world. Again, routine, normal. My heaviness began December 26, 1999, and it's what I call one of my many gifts from God. My intuition, my gut feeling. My soul just knew something life-changing was coming. I didn't know what or even for who, but I knew whatever it was going to affect me. I had no clue how much my life would change with just one phone call. I do remember kind of putting this phone call off too. I got my husband off to work. I made me another cup of coffee. I sat down at my kitchen table and I dialed my brother's friend, who later on in life had become one of my friends. She said, "Hello." I said, "Good morning. What did you need to talk to me about?" She said, "I don't know how I'm going to tell you what I'm about to." I said, "What? What is it?" I had no clue what was coming. She said another of my brother's friends that they both had went to school with had gotten a hold of her and wanted her to relay to my brother and I her condolences. I said, "Her condolences for what?" She said, "To both you and your brother for the loss of your mom." What? That's a moment in time I will never forget. I felt the blood drain from me, like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't concept what was just told to me. I said, "Did my mom die?" She said, "Apparently so." I said, "When?" She said neither her nor the friend that had sent the condolences knew. So I asked how that friend found out. My head is spinning at this point. I'm sure I was in shock. She proceeded to tell me that that friend found out because one of my family members went to that friend's aunt's house and notified her aunt. Mind you, not a lady I know, never met, and whom wasn't related to my mom at all. So common courtesy was given to total strangers being notified of my mother's death and not to her own daughter. Only my family. In shock, still in disbelief, I told her I have to call our family mortuary, the one most of my deceased family has been at. And the reason for that, my mom always said, was because my mom and her siblings grew up with the president of that mortuary. Our family knew their family from down south, and so I guess out of knowing him personally, they trusted him and used his mortuary more times than not. So I hung up with her. I looked up the number to the mortuary. I took a breath. I even said out loud before I dialed the number, "This can't be." I would have been notified. By law, I had to be. At least that's what I was told years prior by an attorney who was prominent in our community. I took a breath and I dialed. A lady answered, and I told her I was trying to find out if my mother had even died. What a bizarre phone call to even have to make, right? I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. I told her my mom's name. She put me on hold. Not long after, a gentleman said, "Hello, how can I help you?" I explained to him that a friend of a friend had sent me and my brother condolences, and I wasn't even sure if this was real or maybe just a rumor that my mom had died. I then explained to him that I then immediately called that mortuary because if anyone knew, it would be them. After giving him all the information, her name, her date of birth, my name, my date of birth, to identify exactly who I was, her daughter. I was born in this county, live in this town. He then took a deep breath and said, "Without proof, you are who you say you are." Again, her daughter. "I can only give you a limited amount of information." I said, "Okay," frustrated because I am, in fact, her daughter. I said, "Did she pass away?" He said, "Yes, she did." My heart dropped, almost like time had stopped right that moment. Up until that moment, I was in my head going, "There's no way. I would have been notified somehow, some way, by someone." I live in a small town, and it's not hard to locate someone in this town. So I asked when. He then said, December 26, 1999, the day after Christmas. That explained my emotions and the heaviness I had had ever since that day. The need to be alone. Pulling out those PJs the night before. Again, not a pair I ever wear, and I haven't worn them since that night. And the glimpse of my grandma that night before, a split second, that all made sense, but I was in total disbelief, total shock. So I asked, was she buried in Kentucky in her plot at our family cemetery? Mind you, my mom had purchased her headstone just a few years prior, spent a lot of money to have exactly what she wanted. 14-karat gold plating lined it, and there was a cross on it, a picture of herself, and on the back of her headstone, engraved, it read, "My children," my brother's name, and then my name, and then my grandchildren, listed by their age. So my assumption was, tradition in my family is, our loved ones are taken to Kentucky or Tennessee, depending on what side of the family it was on, and laid to rest, buried. Tradition. A minister or a preacher, and flowers. Again, our tradition. That was my first concern. Still in shock, but wanted to know the how, why, and where is my mom now? In her plot in Kentucky? He then told me, no, she was cremated. What? No way. Literally, shock and anger met at that very second. I told him, are you sure? Because my family don't believe in that. We have had people pass away unexpectedly in our family that have had no life insurance, no parents to pay for a funeral. And by the grace of God, as dysfunctional of a family as we are, we've always managed to pull together funds. And with donations such as money, grave plots, opening and closing of the grave, God has always made it possible to give those that pass nice services for people to pay their respects and then burial. Cremation was unheard of, never been done to not one single family member on either side of my family. And I dug back generations too. So at that moment, I could not concept that. My brain couldn't absorb it. Completely heartbroken, shocked like no other. Shocking to find out my mother died, and in the same town that I live in, and no one felt the need to notify me. I mean, by law, I should have been notified. I am next of kin legally. My mom wasn't married at the time of her death. And even more shocking, to find out she was cremated. Could you imagine? I wouldn't be able to wrap my head around it if it hadn't happened to me personally. Who could imagine that, right? What a nightmare I just stepped into, and with one phone call, too. Everything in my world as I knew it changed. Well, that was the information that he could give me on the phone without proof that I am who I say I am, her daughter. So, with it being Saturday morning, I let him know I would be at the mortuary Monday, January 13th, 2020, first thing, and I would have my birth certificate and proof that I was her daughter. I thanked who is the general manager of the mortuary, and I hung up. I was in total disbelief, shock, angry that she was cremated. So many emotions all at once. I didn't get to say goodbye. She and I had things that needed to be settled, things left to say. We both needed that. I needed an apology for the abuse, the betrayals, the hurt, the pain she inflicted upon me. And I needed for her to take accountability for once in her life. And she needed to know I was fine. I survived. I was happy and healthy. But most of all, I wanted her to know, even though I never understood it at that time, I do now, why she treated me the way she did. I wanted her to know that I forgave her a long time ago. I wanted her to have a peace of mind so that her soul could rest in peace. I wanted to be able to give that to her. My grandma always taught me that God heals you before he takes you home. So my whole life, I waited to have that final conversation with my mom, because then maybe her mind would be clear of the trauma she suffered, that in turn became a horrible mental illness that plagued my mom her whole life. And it affected everyone in her life. It affected my brother and I the most. I can't even describe what my emotions were. I felt betrayed, hurt, heartbroken, robbed of rights that I was entitled to. January 13th, 2020, Monday morning, couldn't come fast enough. I wanted to find out who all was behind this, what I call an illegal cremation, because that's exactly what it was, what it is, what it will always be. Against the law, any way you look at it. This concludes my podcast for today. Please join me next Tuesday. Listen in, and always remember, your journey is not over. God bless.
God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been